Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. The following content explores the historical, sociological, and logistical evolution of the modern urban divorce journey in American cities. This video is created strictly for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes. It does not constitute formal legal, financial, or psychological advice. Family law, asset division, and marital regulations vary significantly by state, municipality, and individual jurisdiction. Viewers navigating these circumstances should conduct their own thorough due diligence and consult with qualified, licensed professionals, such as family law attorneys or certified financial planners, before making any major life decisions. Imagine standing at the intersection of 5th Avenue and 42nd Street in New York City, or looking down from a high-rise in downtown Chicago, and realizing that the very architecture of these modern American cities has been quietly redesigned by the breakdown of the American marriage. In major metropolitan areas across the United States, the traditional trajectory of adulthood has completely fractured. For decades, the narrative was simple. Move to the city, climb the corporate ladder, secure a partner, buy property, and build a life. But today, a quiet revolution is taking place in our urban centers. Statistically, in dense urban environments, the logistics of uncoupling have become more complex, more expensive, and more deeply embedded in our socioeconomic fabric than at any other point in American history. We are witnessing a phenomenon where the modern city acts as both a catalyst for marital strain and a highly specialized, multi-billion-dollar laboratory for processing the end of relationships. The sheer density of urban life amplifies every friction point of a breakup, turning what used to be a private family matter into a complex logistical, architectural, and financial puzzle that reshapes neighborhoods, housing markets, and local economies. This video solves the ultimate mystery of how modern urban environments change the way we love, stay together, and inevitably pull apart. By the end of this deep dive masterclass, you will understand the hidden historical trends that transformed the American divorce from a rare, stigmatized legal battle into a highly systematized urban industry. You will discover how skyrocketing real estate costs in cities like San Francisco, Miami, and Boston have forced a radical reimagining of the domestic space, creating bizarre new living arrangements where ex-spouses are forced to cohabitate as roommates long after the legal paperwork is signed. We will break down the precise step-by-step evolution of how the American legal and corporate landscape adapted to the shifting dynamics of the urban professional class, tracing the journey from the early days of fault-based legal warfare to the rise of contemporary collaborative mediation. Whether you are analyzing the changing demographics of major U.S. metropolises, looking at the macroeconomic impacts on the housing market, or trying to understand the social fabric of the modern American professional class, this comprehensive exploration will give you the historical context and structural data to see the city through a completely different lens. To truly understand how we arrived at the contemporary urban divorce journey, we must first dissect the historical trends that laid the groundwork over the past century. In the early to mid-20th century, the concept of ending a marriage in an American city was radically different from what we see today. Prior to the late 1960s, the United States operated under a strict fault-based system. This meant that for a couple in a city like Philadelphia or Detroit to legally sever their union, one party had to explicitly prove wrongdoing by the other. The legally recognized grounds were narrow, typically requiring documented evidence of adultery, physical cruelty, or extreme desertion. In an urban environment, this legal framework created a massive, underground economy of surveillance and performative legal maneuvering. Private investigators made entire careers out of tailing spouses through downtown hotels, snapping grainy photographs to present before a judge. Case studies from this era reveal a bizarre subculture of staged infractions, where couples who mutually agreed they could no longer live together would literally manufacture scenarios of infidelity just to satisfy the statutory requirements of the state courts. This system disproportionately impacted urban residents, who lived under closer scrutiny and had greater access to the legal machinery, yet faced immense social ostracization. The city itself became a stage for public shaming, as court dockets were published in local newspapers, exposing the private failures of prominent urban families to their neighbors and employers. The structural turning point occurred in 1969, when California became the first state to pass no-fault divorce legislation, a movement that rapidly swept across the rest of the United States throughout the 1970s and 1980s. This legal shift fundamentally altered the demographic and economic trajectory of American cities. No longer did individuals need to prove a catastrophic moral failure to exit a marriage. Instead, they could cite irreconcilable differences. The immediate historical trend following this legislative shift was a dramatic spike in the number of legal filings nationwide. But the epicenter of this shift was undeniably the American city. Urban centers, with their high concentrations of young professionals, greater economic independence for women, and diverse social networks, experienced a rapid destigmatization of the process. The city became a sanctuary for reinvention. As women entered the urban workforce in unprecedented numbers during this same era, financial independence meant that staying in an unviable marriage was no longer an absolute economic necessity for survival. This symbiosis between no-fault legal frameworks and urban economic empowerment completely rewrote the rules of domestic life, turning the city into a magnet for individuals seeking to start over. As the legal barriers dissolved, a highly specialized ecosystem began to emerge within the urban core to manage this massive demographic shift. In the late 20th century, major American cities saw the birth of the dedicated family law boutique firm. Previously, matrimonial law was often handled by general practitioners or viewed as a less prestigious subset of civil litigation. However, as the financial assets of urban couples grew increasingly complex, encompassing corporate stocks, commercial real estate, pension plans, and intellectual property, the demand for specialized expertise skyrocketed. Centers of commerce like New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles became hotbeds for a new class of high-stakes matrimonial attorneys. These professionals had to be part legal tactician, part forensic accountant, and part corporate strategist. The urban landscape adapted to facilitate this industry, with entire office buildings near municipal courthouses becoming populated by court reporters, forensic appraisers, custody evaluators, and mediators. The process was no longer just a personal transition. It had evolved into a sophisticated, multi-layered urban industry that generated billions of dollars in economic activity, driving demand for commercial office space, specialized psychological services, and specialized financial consulting. This brings us to the profound macroeconomic and architectural consequences that this evolution has inflicted upon the modern American housing market. In dense urban areas where real estate is the ultimate premium, the logistics of separating two lives hit an immediate, uncompromising wall: the cost per square foot. Historically, when a suburban couple parted ways, the standard protocol involved selling the single-family home and using the divided equity to purchase or rent two smaller, comparable properties in the same general region. In a modern Tier 1 American city, however, this playbook is often completely mathematically impossible. Consider the modern reality in cities like Manhattan, San Francisco, or Seattle, where the median price of a two-bedroom apartment regularly reaches astronomical heights, and rental markets are fiercely competitive. When an urban couple decides to separate, they face a brutal economic calculus. The single household income or the combined dual income that allowed them to afford a comfortable apartment in a desirable school district or close to a transit hub is suddenly split down the middle. This financial reality has forced the development of entirely new, unconventional urban living arrangements that defy traditional sociological expectations. One of the most striking contemporary phenomena resulting from this economic pressure is the rise of urban cohabitation post-separation. Case studies across major metropolitan areas highlight an increasing number of couples who have legally, emotionally, and socially ended their relationship, yet continue to live under the exact same roof for months, or sometimes even years. The sheer expense of breaking a lease early, the penalty of refinancing a mortgage at a higher interest rate, or the inability to qualify for two separate luxury rentals in a hyperinflated market forces these individuals to divide their existing apartments into makeshift zones. Architects and interior designers in urban centers have noted an uptick in requests to remodel existing lofts or condominiums to create dual primary suites, soundproof partitions, or separate entrances within a single unit. The city apartment, originally designed to be an intimate sanctuary for a nuclear family, is transformed into a tense, hyper-functional shared facility. This economic gridlock completely reshapes the daily routine of the urban citizen, who must navigate the psychological toll of a failed relationship while sharing a kitchen counter, a refrigerator, and an entryway with their former partner, all because the urban real estate market refuses to accommodate their need for space. When cohabitation is completely untenable, the ripple effects hit the broader urban real estate ecosystem with immense force. The sudden dissolution of a marriage creates an immediate, urgent demand for two separate households where only one existed before. This demographic pressure has been a silent driver behind the massive boom in luxury studio and one-bedroom apartment developments, across American downtown districts. Developers have intentionally capitalized on this demographic shift, designing high-density residential towers that cater specifically to single professionals navigating transitional life phases. These buildings emphasize extensive communal amenities, such as co-working spaces, rooftop lounges, fitness centers, and integrated dining options, effectively replacing the traditional domestic infrastructure with outsourced, vertical community spaces. The separated urban professional isn't just buying a smaller living space. They are purchasing an outsourced lifestyle that mitigates the isolation of a sudden solo existence in a hyperdense environment. Consequently, the urban landscape is physically reshaped, shifting away from larger family-oriented spaces toward a modular, transient architectural model optimized for rapid individual turnover. Beyond the physical structures of the city, the evolution of this journey has radically transformed the modern corporate workplace. American corporations, particularly those anchored in major urban hubs within the technology, finance, and legal sectors, have had to confront the reality that marital disruption is one of the single greatest hidden drains on employee productivity and retention. The intense, high-octane demands of urban corporate culture leave very little margin for personal crisis. A standard litigated separation can require hundreds of hours of documentation gathering, meetings with legal counsel, court appearances, and intense psychological strain, all of which inevitably bleed into the traditional 9-to-5 workday. For decades, the corporate response was silence, expecting workers to leave their personal baggage at the revolving doors of the office lobby. However, as the war for executive talent intensified in major metropolitan areas, the corporate landscape underwent a significant structural adaptation. Today, forward-thinking urban employers have integrated comprehensive transition support into their standard employee benefits packages, viewing it as an essential component of risk management and talent preservation. Human resource departments now routinely offer access to specialized employee assistance programs that feature dedicated family law consulting, concierge mental health services, and specialized financial counseling to help employees restructure their portfolios during a split. Some elite firms have even introduced paid personal leave policies specifically designated for navigating family restructuring, acknowledging that providing an employee with a dedicated week to handle mediation or coordinate a physical move is far more beneficial to the company's long-term bottom line than forcing them to suffer through a prolonged period of burnout and distracted performance. This corporate recognition further normalizes and institutionalizes the experience, shifting it from a taboo personal failure to a standard, manageable life event that occurs within the career arc of the modern urban professional. The office environment itself has adapted, with the inclusion of private wellness rooms and secure digital portals allowing employees to take sensitive calls with legal counsel or manage document uploads without exposing their private matters to an open-plan office layout. The shift in the corporate landscape highlights a much deeper structural transformation in how modern urban wealth is evaluated and divided. In the year 2026, the definition of marital assets for a professional couple living in a major city bears almost no resemblance to the asset portfolios of previous generations. Historically, asset division focused primarily on tangible, static wealth such as a primary suburban residence, a couple of family vehicles, a joint savings account, and perhaps a predictable corporate pension. Today, the asset landscape of the urban professional class is highly digitized, volatile, and deeply intertwined with the fluctuating fortunes of the metropolitan economy. Imagine a couple named Michael and Sarah living in a high-rise apartment in Austin, Texas. Michael is a senior product manager at a major technology firm, and Sarah is a director at a venture-backed biotechnology startup. Over the course of their 8-year marriage, their primary wealth accumulation did not occur through traditional home equity or standard cash savings. Instead, their net worth is bound up in a complex web of unvested restricted stock units, stock options, digital asset portfolios, deferred compensation structures, and carried interest in a private equity fund. When a couple like Michael and Sarah enters the modern urban divorce journey, evaluating these assets requires a sophisticated multi-step forensic process. The traditional method of simply looking at a bank statement on a specific date is entirely obsolete. Instead, specialized forensic accountants are brought in to map out vesting schedules that stretch years into the future. They must apply complex financial models to determine the present value of options that may or may not pay out depending on market conditions, corporate acquisitions, or future funding rounds. This valuation process introduces massive volatility into the negotiations, as both parties argue over the potential outcomes of these financial instruments in a fluctuating 2026 market. Furthermore, the rise of digital assets and decentralized finance has added an entirely new layer of complexity to the urban asset division process. Case studies from tech-centric hubs like Miami and San Francisco reveal a growing trend of hidden asset discovery, where forensic investigators must track cryptocurrency transactions, non-fungible tokens, and stakes in decentralized autonomous organizations across various digital wallets. Unlike a traditional bank account tied to a social security number, these digital assets can be easily obfuscated or transferred across borders with minimal immediate paper trails. The modern urban family law attorney must essentially double as a digital detective, utilizing blockchain analytics software to trace the flow of marital funds that were converted into digital currencies during the marriage. This complexity extends directly into the realm of professional goodwill and career valuation, which is particularly prevalent in dense urban professional circles. In cities dominated by highly specialized industries, such as entertainment in Los Angeles, finance in New York, or lobbying in Washington, D.C., an individual's professional brand and network can be worth far more than their physical possessions. Modern legal frameworks in various urban jurisdictions have increasingly recognized enhanced earning capacity as a marital asset subject to valuation and equitable distribution. If one spouse supported the other through a prestigious executive MBA program at a top-tier university, or if they managed the household while the other built a highly lucrative client book at a wealth management firm, the future earning potential generated during those years becomes a battleground. Valuation experts are tasked with projecting the lifetime value of that specific career trajectory, comparing it to a baseline career path, and calculating a lump sum value or a structured payout schedule. This process turns the human capital of the urban professional into a corporate balance sheet, subjected to intense scrutiny, deposition, and cross-examination. The intense financial and emotional toll of evaluating these complex portfolios has driven a massive structural shift away from the traditional adversarial courtroom battle toward highly structured alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. For decades, the public perception of divorce was defined by the high-profile courtroom drama, where opposing attorneys clashed in front of a judge, and dirty laundry was aired in public records. In the current 2026 urban landscape, this approach is increasingly viewed as an inefficient, costly, and unnecessarily destructive relic of the past. High-net-worth urban professionals simply cannot afford the reputational damage or the massive billable hours associated with prolonged litigation. Instead, the modern urban journey relies heavily on collaborative law and private mediation systems. In a collaborative law framework, both parties sign a binding agreement stipulating that their respective attorneys will work together in good faith to reach a settlement outside of court. If the process breaks down and either party decides to litigate, both attorneys are legally disqualified from continuing to represent them, forcing the couple to hire entirely new legal teams and start from scratch. This creates a powerful economic incentive for both sides to remain at the negotiating table and find creative compromises. Private mediation has evolved into an elite, highly professionalized industry within major American cities. These sessions do not take place in sterile courthouse corridors, but in luxury high-rise conference rooms equipped with advanced digital presentation tools and catering services. The mediators are often retired family court judges or senior attorneys who command premium hourly rates to guide couples through a systematic, step-by-step resolution of their disputes. The process is highly modular, breaking down the separation into discrete modules: child scheduling logistics, real estate division, corporate asset valuation, and tax optimization strategies. This business-like approach appeals directly to the sensibilities of urban executives who are accustomed to negotiating corporate mergers and acquisitions, allowing them to view the end of their marriage through the lens of a structured corporate restructuring. However, even the most sophisticated mediation cannot fully insulate a separating couple from the deeply personal and logistically challenging realities of co-parenting in a modern city. The challenge of managing child custody within a hyperdense urban environment introduces friction points that are completely unique to metropolitan life, transforming the daily routine of post-separation family dynamics into a complex logistical operation. To understand how urban density complicates co-parenting, one must look at the physical layout of the city itself. In a traditional suburban setting, separated parents often remain within the same school district or township, allowing children to move between houses with a short drive down a residential avenue. In a massive metropolitan area, a distance of just 4 miles can translate into a grueling 45-minute subway commute or a gridlock drive across a bridge during rush hour. This brings us to a major conflict point that is currently redefining family law dynamics across America's largest cities: the hyperlocalization of custody agreements. When parents split up in a city like Chicago or Boston, the fight is no longer just about which days of the week each parent gets. It is a granular battle over specific neighborhoods, public transit routes, and school proximity. If one parent relocates from a downtown condo to a more affordable outer borough to secure more square footage, the logistical burden of exchanging the children twice a week becomes an immense source of friction. The time spent navigating urban transit infrastructure, coordinating pickups at crowded subway stations, and managing the logistics of heavy school bags across busy city streets can quickly turn a standard joint custody arrangement into a logistical nightmare that pushes both parents to their breaking point. But what happens when the financial pressures of the city collide with these strict custody schedules, forcing parents to invent entirely new, radical ways to share a single piece of real estate? What happens when the traditional concept of moving out is completely abandoned for a psychological experiment known as nesting, where the children stay put and the adults are the ones constantly on the move? The reality of how modern urbanites are forced to survive the aftermath of a split stretches far beyond the courtroom, touching on hidden networks of micro-apartments, secret financial arrangements, and a growing subculture of divorced individuals trying to maintain a facade of stability in the most expensive zip codes in America. To fully grasp how this logistical nightmare plays out in the real world, look closely at the concept of birdnesting, an increasingly prominent housing arrangement in major urban hubs across the United States. In a traditional separation, the children are the ones who endure the disruption of packing bags every few days, moving back and forth between two distinct environments. In a hyper-expensive metropolitan housing market, a growing number of urban professionals are completely flipping this script. Imagine if a couple named David and Elena, living in a premium neighborhood in Seattle, Washington in the year 2026, decide to legally separate. They have two school-aged children enrolled in a highly competitive local public school. Selling their property or renting two separate three-bedroom apartments within that same exclusive school district would deal a devastating financial blow to both of their long-term economic profiles. Instead, they choose to implement a strict birdnesting arrangement. The children remain permanently in the family apartment, maintaining their routines, their friendships, and their sense of stability. David and Elena, however, become nomadic. When it is Elena's custody week, she occupies the primary residence with the children while David moves out. When the week concludes, they rotate. David returns to the primary apartment, and Elena packs her bags to leave. To make this radical setup function, David and Elena enter into a secondary, hidden real estate market that has quietly boomed alongside the urban divorce industry: the micro-apartment or shared studio pool. They jointly lease a tiny 300-square-foot studio apartment, located a few miles away in a less expensive part of the city. This secondary space is treated purely as a functional landing pad. It contains a single bed, a minimal wardrobe, and basic amenities. When David is not at the main apartment with the kids, he stays at the studio. When Elena is off duty, she occupies that exact same studio. This arrangement requires an unprecedented level of emotional detachment and rigorous execution. Case studies examining these unconventional arrangements reveal a fascinating step-by-step operational protocol that couples must develop to avoid total psychological collapse. They must establish digital tracking spreadsheets detailing exactly how the micro-apartment must be cleaned, reset, and laundered before the next spouse arrives. They must navigate the deeply uncomfortable reality of sharing a refrigerator and a bed in two different locations, all while legally dissolving their marriage. The financial upside is clear. They preserve the primary real estate asset, avoid a forced sale in a volatile interest rate environment, and shield their children from the immediate trauma of relocation. Yet, the psychological toll on the adults is immense. The constant state of transience, living out of suitcases, and the lack of a true personal sanctuary can create a profound sense of rootlessness. The city itself becomes a giant chessboard, and the separating parents are pieces constantly in motion, moving between the family zone and the transition zone. As this subculture of nomadic ex-spouses grows, it triggers a secondary wave of economic adaptations throughout the service sector of major cities. A new niche of professional organizers, property managers, and specialized cleaning services has emerged to cater specifically to birdnesting couples. These companies offer objective, third-party management of both the primary residence and the shared studio, ensuring that data logs are kept,